Chris, thanks so much for your time. You're looking to boost demand in what many call a depressed platinum market. How do you intend to do that?
So, Fifi, thanks for the opportunity. One of the things that I'd like to mention is that this is a very important part of the strategy of the company and has been for a number of years, and that is to focus on the development of demand for PGMs. So, for example, we spend quite a lot of money. We spend about $60 million a year on putting money into both jewelry and investment demand. And we do that through industry bodies that we put the majority of the money into. So PGI, who does the development for jewelry, and the WPIC, which does the development for investment. But one of the things that we've been doing internally, and not as an industry, is providing funding into the investment in companies for industrial uses of PGMs, for platinum group metals. And so over the last number of years, we've had a fund that has grown to about $60 million. But we have seen that now that fund is probably about the biggest we can make it by ourselves. And so over the last year, we've been working together with the PIC to see if we could spin off our fund into a private venture capital fund and thereby being able to attract external investment into that fund. And so what we've been able to announce today is a significant step up on the work that we've already been doing. And so the PIC are going to invest $100 million, and we'll invest $100 million and put the 7 companies, the shareholding in those 7 companies that we've invested in so far, we're going to put that into the fund.
And Chris, so just give us a little bit more insights into these venture capitalists that you've trusted with so much of your money. Who are they? What is their track record?
So a number of the executives that are now going to be running this independent fund are actually executives that used to run this fund internally for Anglo Platinum. So we know the individuals. The individuals themselves have significant track record in being able to develop these new startup companies and invest in those companies. And now that we're actually going to take those investments and put them into the new fund. So we have got a lot of faith in both the individuals and the process that we're following, that this will be able to create significant new demand.
What kind of industrial uses are we talking here? Because right now, if we focus on platinum specifically, you've got a platinum price that is grappling with the fact that diesel cars in Germany and very many parts in Europe have been banned, and that is weighing on it. So where will the driver, the demand pool for platinum come from?
So one of the things that is very important to remember is that we actually produce platinum group metals. The majority, about 60% of them, or about 55% probably of all the metals we produce is platinum. But then we also produce palladium, rhodium, iridium, ruthenium. So it's important to look at our business as platinum group metals. Now, you've mentioned platinum, and platinum has had some headwinds, certainly in the sector of demand from the auto business, and particularly diesel. But there are other 2 equally as big. So platinum has got sort of 3 equal demand segments. One is the auto sector you mentioned, but then there's also both jewelry and industrial that are about as big as the auto sector. Industrial has been growing very, very strongly, and industrial is everything from glass manufacturing, very specialist electronics, petroleum refining, all that sort of thing. That's what makes up the industrial sector. And as the world keeps growing, that segment of the market continues to grow in line with world GDP numbers. And then jewelry is also, it was dropping over the last couple of years in China, but with the growth in India, we're starting to see that flatten out. So it's in this industrial space that this particular fund is going to be focusing on. And the kind of things that we've invested in those 7 projects so far are both in so they're companies, for example, one is a fuel cell manufacturer, one is energy storage. There's a company that's quite interesting around food freshness. For example, you put a small little platinum-laden sheet into fridges in supermarkets, for example. And what it does is it changes the nature in which the gases are given off as fruit ripens, And so it slows down the ripening of fruit without putting any other process on top of that. There's also been things like gas to liquids development and hydrogen manufacturing. So it's all that kind of thing that this investment will go behind.
And Chris, I mean, just one last question. Sorry, how are you funding this? And also, I mean, what's the expected benefit for shareholders of Anglo? But also for the PIC to have committed so much of money, they needed to have the South African interest in mind in terms of job creation, in terms of business growth. So what's the value add broadly for shareholders and also consumers and people of South Africa?
So I think it's a really good question, because one of the things that we've seen over the last number of years is, as you mentioned earlier, with fairly stagnant demand growth, that's actually what has been the big sort of factor weighing on the platinum group metal industry in South Africa. And so our strategy is to say, well, not only should we manage costs and not only should we manage what we're doing on the operational side, PGMs are an industry where you can actually create demand. So it's very similar to the diamond business. You can actually, by very clever marketing, by focusing on the creation of demand, you can actually increase the amount of demand for your products. And so that's what this does. And if we see that demand increases, much like we've seen in the investment that we have with jewelry, we believe that this will make, and as it has already shown in the past, that this will increase the amount of demand, and with supply fairly stable, we're likely to see a response in price. And so over time, that's how the shareholders will get their benefit.
How much time, Chris?
Well, we've seen that as we've invested in jewelry in the past, and we've grown the jewelry market from pretty much nothing to about 1.5 million ounces in China. We started growing 5 years ago. We started putting money into the jewelry sector in India. And normally the Indians, you'll know, is not really a white metal sector. We've grown the Indian jewelry from almost nothing to 250,000 ounces. We've got a 20% growth rate per annum. We've been able to do that in 5 years. So we think that's about the time. So sort of 3, 4, 5 years, that's the kind of payback time that you need for this sort of investment.